A Tennessee community is shocked when a beloved elderly woman vanishes. As investigators search, the mystery of her disappearance deepens. The truth begins to emerge, but slowly and in unexpected directions. As police and the FBI try to help a troubled small town find their dear friend.
In 1992, a woman disappeared from her Memphis home. When the ransom went uncollected, the FBI suspected a desperate amateur and feared the worst. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As the search for the woman progressed, investigators uncovered a web of lies and false accusations designed to hide the real perpetrator.
Memphis, Tennessee. On August 7th, 1992, 25 miles outside the city in the small town of Eads, successful land developer Alan Roberts arrived home from work. As usual, his wife's car was in the driveway, but he was surprised to find the mail there.
Doe?
His wife, Doe Roberts, usually left a note when she went out, but there was none.
Doe?
In the kitchen, Alan spotted Doe's asthma medication on the counter. She always took the inhaler when she went out. He called their closest friends nearby.
Bill? Yeah, Bill, this is Alan. Have you seen Doe today? Has she been over there?
No one he spoke to had heard from Doe.
Still not here. I'm a little bit worried, okay? I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go out and look around the property for her. You do me a favor, call around, see if you can find her, okay? Hello?
Roberts worried she might have had an asthma attack while working in the garden. He searched the grounds of their farm. No sign of Doe.
Doe? Doe?
He was about to call the police when his telephone rang.
Hello, Doe?
It was a man speaking with an Asian accent.
You have Doe? What do you mean you have Doe? What do you want?
The caller demanded a $100,000 ransom for Doe's safe return.
Not a problem. I can take care of it. It'll take me a little time. You just let me know what you want me to do, and I'll do it, okay?
But he didn't explain where to take the money.
Where do you want me to take it?
Before he hung up.
Hello?
Stunned, Alan immediately called the Shelby County Sheriff's Department and told them about his wife's disappearance and the ransom call he received. A team of deputies and sheriff's inspectors responded to the house.
Not too good. My wife is not here.
Roberts told them he did not recognize the voice of the caller and did not know anyone who would want to harm Doe.
I came back home then about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I woke up.
As the interview continued, agents from the FBI's Memphis field office arrived. Eads is about 30 miles from both the Arkansas and Mississippi borders. If someone took Doe across state lines, the FBI would take the lead, since transporting a victim state to state is a federal crime. Roberts explained he last saw his wife that morning.
So you're planning on working in the
They had
garden
eaten
today?
breakfast together, as they had every morning for 43 years.
Yes, I am. I hope it's not too hot to work.
At 10, Alan left to meet a prospective out-of-town buyer for a property he was developing.
See you later.
All right, have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
The buyer, a man named Sam Wagner, had called the day before, making an appointment to see the property at 10:30 that morning.
Morning, Todd.
Robert said he waited for over an hour, but Sam Wagner never showed.
Seemed like
He spent the rest of the afternoon laying sod at another of his development properties.
Sure, yeah. You want it? Okay, we're coming this way.
The investigators needed to check the house for evidence. Robert showed them Doe's asthma inhaler and said if she suffered a serious attack without it, she could die. They needed to find her immediately. Looking for signs of forced entry, deputies checked doors and windows. Nothing appeared suspicious.
Is it locked?
Knowing that people sometimes run off voluntarily, faking abductions to cover themselves, deputies checked Doe's bedroom. Her suitcases and all of her clothing were still there, as were her valuables. It didn't seem like she left on her own. If someone had abducted her, one clue suggested it happened outside, according to FBI Special Agent Joanne Overall.
Alan Roberts located mail halfway into the garage, and it was not taken into the house. He suspected that his wife had gone to the mailbox and never made it back into the house, and she had laid the mail down at that point.
Beginning at the driveway, deputies formed search lines, fanning out in a grid pattern to scour the 150-acre farm for any sign of the 65-year-old woman, or what happened to her. Despite the efforts of multiple search teams, they found nothing. The best chance for a new lead would be additional ransom calls.
Got this hooked up. When he called,
We began monitoring Alan Roberts' phone right after the kidnapping. With his consent, we placed a recorder on his phone should he get a call from the kidnapper.
recording when the phone rings.
They also installed tracing equipment.
Leave it down the whole time you're talking. When you finish, push the
If the man with the Asian accent called again, the FBI would be ready. Later that night, the phone rang.
Hello? Yes?
It was coming from a nearby payphone.
No, just don't hurt her. I'll do whatever you want.
Deputies headed toward the source of the call.
Okay,
It sounded like the same man who called earlier.
okay.
He
sure,
said
okay.
Doe was safe, for now, and he knew law enforcement was listening. Robert said the caller ordered him to remove the tape of their conversation and crush it in the driveway.
He wants me to take it outside and smash it. He said he's gonna go watch
They
it.
quickly switched it with a blank tape.
All right, go out there and crush it and I'll watch it.
Oh, okay.
At that time, no surveillance officers were outside. When Shelby County deputies arrived at the payphone, it was clear. Whoever made the call was gone. By daybreak, investigators expanded their search into the Eads community, asking friends and neighbors when they last saw Doe and if they noticed anything unusual on the day of her disappearance.
Doe and Alan Roberts.
Yeah, sure. They live right over there.
No one recalled seeing or hearing from her that day.
Yes, sir?
One neighbor told investigators that at church that week, there seemed to be tension between Doe and Alan, but no solid clues emerged. Word of the kidnapping spread, and news stations picked up the story. Joe Birch of WMC-TV in Memphis reported on the small community's reaction to Doe's disappearance.
I'm just looking at the story about the
lot of people felt it must have been someone from the outside who committed this crime. Because these people worshiped together, they went to square dances together, they spent a lot of their time together, and their focus was their little community and staying away from downtown Memphis and all the danger that might be here. So I think the people in the Eads community felt like an outsider probably committed this crime.
But investigators wondered how, in a place like Eads, a stranger wasn't noticed. As the investigation's first full day drew to a close, Special Agent Overall's concern grew. The 24 hours immediately following a kidnapping are critical. As more time passes, the chances of finding the victim alive diminish rapidly. On the second day, community members gathered to show their support and offer prayers for Doe's safe return. While the town of Eads prayed, investigators turned their attention to the most likely suspect.
In a case like this, we always look at the family members and relatives, people that are closest to the victim first, and then work the circle outwards.
They needed to start with the husband, Alan Roberts. It was possible he had harmed Doe, then used an accomplice to make the ransom calls. It is always difficult when family members realize they are suspects. Authorities had to ask the worried husband to take a polygraph test. It was an unexpected request, but Alan agreed. A polygraph measures a subject's physiological reactions while answering questions. The subject reviews all of the questions before the test, so there are no surprises. Though commonly called a lie detector test, a polygraph does not actually detect lies. It only detects whether the subject is exhibiting the characteristics most people exhibit when lying: spikes in heart rate, perspiration, blood pressure, and respiration.
Are you convinced that I will only ask you questions that we've gone over before?
While polygraph results are rarely admissible in court, many investigators find they point them in the right direction.
Is your first name Alan?
The examiner asked Roberts questions unrelated to the case to establish a baseline for truthful responses. Then he asked questions about his relationship with Doe and the events of the day she disappeared.
Did you kill Doe Roberts?
The examiner then interpreted the graphic output to determine if Roberts appeared to be deceptive on the questions about the case.
All right.
In his opinion, Alan Roberts answered all of the questions truthfully.
You passed?
Alan was sure this was the end of it. But agents knew that test results were not always accurate.
No, did you tell him the truth? You're kidding me.
They could not eliminate him yet. To check Roberts' story, the FBI wanted to find Sam Wagner, the man he allegedly went to meet on the morning of Doe's abduction.
We thought Sam Wagner may have come into this area, and because of their financial backings and holdings, that he may have kidnapped Doe Roberts for the money that they had, because they had a substantial amount of money.
Agents checked FBI databases and nationwide DMV records, searching for anyone named Sam Wagner. In several states, FBI agents interviewed men of that name, but eliminated each as a suspect.
Alan Roberts' story became more suspicious when Sam Wagner became an unknown individual that we couldn't locate, and it became more apparent to us that Alan Roberts could possibly be behind the kidnapping.
Looks like he checks out. I don't think he's got anything.
If Alan did do something to his wife, perhaps the couple's phone records and banking statements would reveal a clue.
There's nothing unusual about any of the phone calls.
Yet investigators uncovered only evidence of a normal life spent in a small town,
It's been in our checking account.
with no sign of contact with anyone suspicious, and no record of Doe spending money after August 7th. No leads were panning out. Eventually, they came to believe Doe Roberts was dead.
After approximately 2 to 3 weeks of being unable to locate the victim, it was more than likely going to end up being a homicide. I requested through my supervisor that we bring in Shelby County Sheriff's Department into the investigation to make it a joint investigation.
If it were a murder, it would be prosecuted in state court. The team returned to the Roberts house.
The second search of Alan Roberts' property was done more in a forensic frame of mind, and we were looking for blood spatterings in the house as well as in the barn.
Again, Roberts cooperated. He would do anything. Forensics technicians from the FBI and the Sheriff's Department processed the buildings, looking for any evidence of a murder, cleanup, or disposal of a body. They also gathered hairs and carpet fibers from Alan's truck to compare to any evidence recovered later. The painstaking search lasted 2 full days. Alan Roberts grew more frustrated that law enforcement had to devote so much time to him as a suspect. He was wearing down, and the real kidnapper was out there, somewhere. In 1992, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department and the Memphis FBI searched Alan Roberts' farm and its buildings for any sign of his wife's possible murder. Roberts had passed a polygraph, and now none of the items on his property tested positive for blood. Yet no other suspects emerged, and investigators had developed circumstantial evidence that implicated Roberts. Although several witnesses had seen Roberts that day, his confirmed alibi only accounted for about 5 hours. Authorities knew that left plenty of time to get rid of a body. Also, some members of the Eads community gave statements claiming Alan Roberts had acted in a suspicious manner following Doe's disappearance, according to Special Agent Joanne Overall.
People within the community felt he did not openly grieve for the loss of his wife. He was socializing shortly after her kidnapping, that both him and his wife were members of a square dancing group, and within a couple of weeks, Alan was back at the square dancing group with various partners.
News anchor Joe Birch observed Roberts' lack of emotion during media coverage.
When somebody's wife disappears, you'd expect to see a level of emotion, and we just didn't see it from Alan Roberts. He was just kind of calm, cool, and collected, and very direct, and there wasn't a lot of teary-eyed, emotional appeals that we see a lot in kidnapping cases.
Investigators kept watching Roberts as he tried to carry on with his life, struggling with the frustration of not knowing where his wife was and being the only suspect in her disappearance. Yet they saw nothing that led them to Doe Roberts. In September, the man with the Asian accent resurfaced, now saying Alan was involved.
Hello? The kidnapper began calling people in the Eads community, stating that Doe Roberts was still alive. Many of the phone calls indicated Alan was part of the scheme to kidnap his wife. It was extremely frustrating because he never gave specific points to drop money.
Several of the people who talked to the kidnapper had caller IDs on their phones, so agents traced the calls to phone booths on a well-traveled road.
We would go to the phone booths immediately, and of course, the individual who was making the phone call was already gone. Other people had already used the phone. We would check the phones for possible fingerprints, and there was just never any evidence to tie an individual to that phone.
Okay. Here?
Each of the calls were made within a few miles of the Roberts house, a significant risk in a small community buzzing about the case. This boldness suggested that the caller was an insider, familiar enough to be inconspicuous in public, and that he considered himself beyond the reach of investigators. Desperate for something solid, Alan Roberts took things into his own hands, offering a reward for Doe's safe return, and announcing he disconnected the FBI's recording and tracing equipment from his phone so the kidnapper could call freely. On October 8, 1992, 2 months after Doe disappeared, the kidnapper called Alan Roberts again.
Is she okay?
He told him to drive to a payphone at a country store a mile away. Now. Roberts hurried to the store. Once again, he was on his own, with no corroborating witness to prove what was happening. The phone was already ringing when he arrived. He hoped, finally, this would be his chance to get his wife back.
Hello?
2 months after someone abducted 65-year-old Doe Roberts, the kidnapper ordered her husband, Alan Roberts, to a payphone.
Hello? Hello?
The man with the Asian accent said Doe was alive and still with him.
That's my wife's birthday.
He asked Roberts for the name of an intermediary, someone Alan trusted that the kidnapper could contact.
Somebody at the church? What do you mean, somebody at the church?
Roberts suggested Charles Lord, a leading church member and friend of the family. The caller said he would be in touch about where to bring the ransom money.
Can I talk to Doe? Please, let me talk to Doe. What? Hello?
Then he hung up.
Well, they've been good neighbors.
Charles Lord, the man Roberts picked to be his intermediary, was a civil servant and treasurer of the local church. He made a public appeal to the kidnapper on Alan Roberts' behalf, asking the man to call him and finally give specific instructions for a ransom drop.
Call my number, and I'll line up how to get.
They all wanted to get Doe back.
There you go.
More calls from the kidnapper came to Charles Lord and others in the community, but still no details for an exchange. In November 1992, Charles Lord called investigators to his home. Special Agent Joanne Overall hoped they finally had a direct link to the kidnapper.
Charles Lord stated that late in the evening he heard a car out on his cove. He walked down to the mailbox and there was a letter placed in his mailbox, which was a kidnapping ransom letter.
Investigators were glad to have physical evidence. Fingerprints, hairs of fibers on the letter might provide a link to the kidnapper. But by the time they got to it, they found the evidence tainted.
Charles Lord took this letter and showed it to several people before we were called in and obtained the letter. So there was quite a few fingerprints on the letter before we got it.
Lab examiners checked all of the prints, determining they belonged to Lord and the people he let handle the letter. Nothing to lead them to the kidnapper. The message was no help either. The ransom had been lowered, but still, no instructions for a drop. It seemed the kidnapper was playing games with them. In case he contacted Lord again, agents set a trap.
Our office set up surveillance on his mailbox using a hidden camera which was literally placed in a birdhouse close to the mailbox.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Go ahead and tilt it up.
Okay, now, let's see if we can back off so we can see it.
If the kidnapper dropped off another note, they'd have him on tape. Agents also installed wiretap and recording devices on Lord's telephone.
Basically what you do every time the phone rings, you just hit the play button.
They still had no real evidence against Alan Roberts. But a new suspect was developing.
Yes, sir, come on in.
Charles Lord began taking an active role in the investigation, often stopping by the sheriff's office to check on their progress.
The Roberts, Doe Roberts? Yes, sir.
The deputies became suspicious.
Wanted to come by and
He seemed too interested. Their suspicion deepened because of the peculiar nature of the phone calls he claimed he got from the kidnapper.
Charles Lord stated he received several phone calls from the kidnapper. He did say that he talked with Doe Roberts, which was unusual because none of the other callers talked with Doe Roberts.
Appreciate it.
But agents never got tapes of the calls.
Really suspicious of that guy.
But every time he received a telephone call, it appeared that our equipment didn't work.
Over the next week, Lord reported another ransom letter and one of Doe's scarves placed in his mailbox. Agents recovered no evidence from the items, but hoped their camera captured images of the kidnapper. They had plenty of the regular mail carrier. But when the tape got to where the kidnapper should appear, it went blank.
When the equipment that was placed at Charles Lord's residence continued to fail, I just thought we had poor equipment. Eventually, it became apparent that somebody was tampering with it.
Agents suspected the interference came from Charles Lord. Then the victim's husband, Alan Roberts, reported a strange encounter with Lord. He said the night before, at the Eads Community Center, Lord summoned him to a private meeting. Alan was surprised when his friend offered to help get Doe back for a price.
Alan Roberts told me that Charles Lord had advised that he had underworld contacts and that there was information available if Charles could get some money to pay for it. Also, Alan advised at that time that Charles Lord was wearing a gun.
It was clear Lord was somehow involved. But investigators needed more than suspicion. They needed evidence. On March 4th, 1993, 7 months after Doe disappeared, there was another twist in the case. Memphis news anchor Joe Birch received a call at his office.
I've never recorded a telephone conversation before, but I decided that I would record this conversation. The call set off a trigger in my mind that this could be the same individual who's been making the anonymous calls in the Doe Roberts case, and I tried to get the man to stay on the line for as long as he would stay.
As Birch spoke to the man with the Asian accent, he tried to elicit details as to who the caller was and what happened to Doe. When Birch tried to set up a ransom drop, the caller hung up.
Hello? Hello? I took the tape directly into my boss's office. We immediately called the FBI and the Shelby County Sheriff's Department.
What can you tell us about Doe Roberts?
Investigators agreed to WMC TV airing the tape, hoping it might flush the kidnapper out. It worked.
Can we help you?
The kidnapper called back. He was angry they aired the tape and demanded no more coverage. But this time, Joe Birch got him to do what no one else had.
Where is Doe Roberts
arrange a ransom drop. Agents and sheriff's inspectors staked out the drop location, ready to grab the caller who had eluded them for so long.
Is that her?
That's her.
You could be positive.
Yeah.
As instructed, a reporter from WMC-TV drove to the spot with $80,000 in cash.
It's her, but I don't see anybody else. Do you see anybody else?
Everyone waited, hoping.
Sit tight. Sit tight. We may have somebody else. They may be waiting. Contact. We are
But the kidnapper never showed.
She's leaving. Okay.
It didn't happen.
One more disappointment in a frustrating investigation.
1409, be advised, subject has just left. No contact. Show us going ahead and clearing the scene.
Other deputies observed Charles Lord was home the entire time. Weeks passed with no movement on the case. Then, in June 1993, the kidnapper arranged another drop. He called two of Doe's nephews and told them to bring the ransom money to a local motel. Soon, the elusive kidnapper finally would surface. In June 1993, investigators working the Doe Roberts kidnapping staked out an Eads, Tennessee motel. Special Agent Joanne Overall was part of the surveillance.
Doe Roberts' nephews received a call from the kidnapper, and they tried to make an arranged ransom drop. They were told to go to a motel room, which they did, but they also called the FBI. They were waiting to get a phone call or meet with somebody.
Other surveillance deputies had been unable to find suspect Charles Lord that night. As the team at the motel watched, a man approached. It was Lord. He went to the room the nephews had rented.
Charles Lord told the nephews of Doe Roberts that he had received a call from the kidnapper and that he was to show up there and get the money, and he would receive a phone call as to where to take the money.
But the nephews wouldn't give him the cash. They said they wanted to deal with the kidnapper directly. Investigators were sure that was exactly who they were dealing with.
He is the only individual who had received a telephone call stating that he had talked with Doe Roberts, and now he was meeting with somebody to pick up money, but we did not have enough evidence at that time to go forward with an arrest.
They did, however, increase their focus on Lord. To look for a financial motive to the kidnapping, the FBI subpoenaed Lord's bank records.
I spoke earlier on the phone.
We went through records trying to determine if he had loans out, what his financial holdings were, and it became apparent that Charles Lord owed a lot of money to several banks in town, substantial amounts of money, and that he was unable to meet the payments and that he had filed for bankruptcy.
That circumstantial evidence allowed investigators to secure a search warrant for Lord's house. In late June 1993, they served the warrant, which allowed them to look for and seize any financial documents. Some of the files they recovered revealed Lord's criminal past.
He had embezzled over $150,000 from the Memphis depot, where he had retired several years prior, and he had embezzled approximately $70,000 from the church there in Eads, where he was attending.
As treasurer of the church, Lord had access to the parish bank accounts and cash donations. Despite the find, investigators still had no direct evidence of the abduction.
We had nothing that we could use to charge him with the kidnapping and the murder of Doe Roberts. It was important to obtain a confession from Charles Lord because we had no body.
Good, maybe this will help us out a little bit.
One agent working the case was trained in criminal profiling.
He wants some more attention.
Analyzing Lord's actions, he offered a behavioral profile to help get the confession.
We have here, we got all these files. Is he gonna repeat his...
He suggested Lord was a manipulative, pathological liar who believed he was untouchable.
It's going to help us out, but I don't know if it's going
The agent felt that overwhelming the suspect's ego was the only way to beat him.
What you guys need to do is let
The
him...
plan was to bring Lord in for an interview and let him see what he would take to be evidence of a massive investigation against him for months.
push into his confessing.
Agents created numerous evidence boxes, hoping to trump Lord's belief he was above the investigation. Then, on August 25, 1993, at the FBI's Memphis field office, investigators met with Lord and his attorney.
I got some questions about. Do you know anything about Mrs. Doe Roberts?
As Charles Lord sat in that room during the interview, I was watching him look at these boxes, realizing that he had been under surveillance for a lot longer than he had anticipated, and he became very nervous.
The FBI's tactics appeared to be working. Lord eventually admitted to making some of the ransom calls. He said he did it to keep the investigation alive for Doe's sake, but denied any involvement in her abduction. Sensing that he was ready to crack, the investigators offered him a deal.
Charles Lord was told by our office, as well as the Shelby County inspector, that if he would take a polygraph and pass a polygraph, we would not look at him any further for the Doe Roberts kidnapping. However, if he failed the polygraph, his attorney and Charles Lord agreed to a further interrogation in reference to the kidnapping.
He agreed. After asking control questions to gauge Lord's truthful response levels, the polygraph examiner asked about Doe, including whether Lord was involved in her abduction.
Did you harm Doe Roberts?
In the end, the examiner believed the polygraph results showed Lord being deceptive. Though the results could not be used in court, they meant authorities could continue questioning the suspect. With Lord's attorney present in the interrogation room, FBI agents and inspectors from the Shelby County Sheriff's Department pressed the suspect, returning again and again to the polygraph results.
I've got every piece of evidence I need, what I need you to do.
At first, he continued to deny involvement, but after several hours, the interview tactics wore him down. Lord said he was ready to tell them what happened. He said he needed cash to pay back his loans and cover the money he stole from the church, and decided to kidnap Doe for ransom. On August 6, 1992, he called the Roberts, posing as a property buyer named Sam Wagner, and arranged to meet Alan. The next day, when he knew Alan was waiting at the development property, he drove by their house. Doe was bringing in the mail.
Doe, there's been an accident.
He knew she would trust him.
Alan's been involved in an accident. Yeah, get in the car and I'll take you to him.
What happened? Do you know? Is he all right?
Lord told investigators he planned to release Doe after he got the ransom, but she suffered a fatal heart attack in his car. He said he panicked and dumped her body and her purse, but he would not say where.
Franklin, would you be willing to take us to where she is?
The investigators believed he was lying, at least about planning to release Doe, and perhaps about other details.
You did what you were supposed to do.
Special Agent Joanne Overall knew they had to find the body to check his story. They offered a deal.
Charles Lord agreed to tell us where Doe Roberts' body was after he had confessed to the kidnapping in exchange for Shelby County not pursuing the death penalty.
Lord claimed he dumped her in the Wolf River, a slow-moving river that runs 90 miles across the southwest corner of the state. The Wolf River empties into the Mississippi at Memphis. Lord said he dumped the remains from a bridge in Fayette County, 13 miles from the Roberts home. Divers would begin 50 yards upriver, searching for the body and purse. Lieutenant John Yancey of the Shelby County Sheriff's Department led the dive in the murky river.
We had 21 divers involved total. The visibility in the river was zero. It was total black water.
And in the dark water, several species of venomous snakes. Adding to the challenge was the fact that the crime took place a year earlier. Any remains would be scattered and difficult to find. FBI agents and sheriff's deputies helped the divers by stretching a rope across the river's width. Divers held onto the rope and moved across its length, searching the river bottom by hand.
Normally you do an arm span, arm over arm for a search for a body because it's large. But we were looking for contents of the purse at the time to try to make sure that this was actually the scene. So we had to bring it down to where we were, instead of doing the large arm spans, we were having to do what I call this the hand grab. And that's where you just get the dirt with your hand, and that way you're able to find everything on the bottom.
Once the divers reached the other bank, the team would move the rope a foot downriver and start over. Anytime a diver found something, he signaled, and additional divers came in to mark and extract the item.
We found a safe that had been taken in a robbery of a cleaner's, and the money had fallen out of the safe, and we found the pennies on the bottom and the dollar bills, but we found no contents of any of her purse. So I feel like if we'd have found pennies on the bottom, we would have found her makeup or a wallet or IDs or anything times back to her.
In 110-degree heat, the team continued their search of every square inch.
On my second day, I was on the bridge, and an elderly lady walked up to me and said, "I want you to do me a favor." And I said, "I'll try to if I can." She said, "I want you to find us something today so we can get this over with, so we can go ahead and bury Doe and get this case over with."
After 3 full days, they had searched a half-mile of the river. They believed the body would not have gone farther than that in the lowland waters.
I went to my boss, my chief, and I told him, I said, based on my experience and what we have done, she's not in here. But if you want us to continue the search, we'll search till it runs into Mississippi. Ever how you want to do it. But I can tell you right now, she's not here.
Investigators were convinced Lord had lied to them, unnecessarily placing the dive team in danger. Special Agent Overall confronted Lord.
We took Charles Lord out to the site and explained to him that these divers were putting their lives in jeopardy and we needed to find the body, and it didn't appear that the body was there.
The suspect had run out of lies. Now he was ready to tell investigators what really happened to Doe Roberts. After a 3-day search of Tennessee's Wolf River, dive leader Lieutenant John Yancey believed the remains of kidnapping victim Doe Roberts were not in the river.
We had searched everywhere possible, and just over the years of experience, I would have found something by now, either some bones, some makeup, or something. I said, based on my experience, she's not in here. There the divers are, she's not there.
Investigators confronted suspect Charles Lord.
The deal's gonna come off the table.
Realizing they would not give up until they got the truth, Lord admitted Doe had not died of a heart attack in his car.
They've searched the
He said he took her to his house and tied her up in a room above the garage. He could never let his neighbor go, now. He tried to kill her with sleeping pills. When that didn't work, he smothered her with a pillow. Lord said he buried her in his backyard compost heap. On top of the body, he placed a layer of lime, then concrete, hoping they would hasten decomposition. They needed to determine if Lord was telling the truth this time, to retrieve evidence and give Doe's family the closure of knowing what happened.
Stand by.
The sheriff's department called in forensic anthropologists from the University of Tennessee. After removing layers of leaves and compost, they began the dig. Shelby County Sheriff's Lieutenant Ronald Goodwin supervised the meticulous excavation.
It's just using brushes and little trowels, much like uncovering artifacts. And it's one spoonful at a time to make sure that you don't miss any evidence and make sure you don't do anything to harm what evidence may be with the body.
After 2 hours, they pierced a shell of concrete and lime. In the space underneath, a body.
Well, the first thing that we came to was the hand. The rest of the body was laying flat in the grave site on its back, face up.
It took 17 hours to completely exhume the remains, and what investigators found surprised them.
The skin was intact. The body was in such good condition, I felt like that many scientific tests that we could run might reveal. It's poisoning, cause of death, sexual attack, or whatever. It appeared that the actions that Mr. Lord had taken, such as the lime and so forth on top of the body, had worked in reverse, and it had preserved the body for us.
The most chilling detail was the position of the 65-year-old woman's hand.
The only thing that was out of normal position was the hand, which was up in front of her face in a defensive position with a finger spread.
It appeared to investigators she might not have been dead when she was buried.
Maybe she was still alive. Maybe she was pushing up with her hand.
Over a year after Doe Roberts disappeared, the FBI and Alan Roberts had their evidence. On October 19, 1993, Charles Lord pled guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life plus 25 years. Doe's husband, Alan, had endured being a suspect for months. Now, with the truth out, he could finally lay Doe to rest. But one challenge remains for Alan Roberts.
It's an uneven closure. I'm trying to forget about Charles Lord, and I'm praying that God will let me forgive him. I'm praying that Doe is in God's hands right now.
Mr. and Mrs. Roberts enjoyed 43 years of marriage before they were torn apart. He has faith that one day he will see her again. In Las Vegas, fortunes are won and lost through games of chance, but some try to beat the odds with violence. A ruthless band of vicious thugs strikes several casinos, taking thousands of dollars, leaving a bloody trail in their wake. Local police and the FBI team up to identify and track down the deadly gunman, who will stop at nothing to avoid capture.
kind of story that Hollywood films are made of. Brazen armed robberies of Las Vegas casinos. But this was no movie. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. They were a gang of criminal masterminds. They carried automatic weapons and were not afraid to use them. With each and every new heist, they became bolder and more deadly, until the FBI stepped in, determined to end their violent rampage.
Las Vegas, Nevada, September 20th, 1998. It is shortly before noon at the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino. Two armed couriers, escorted by an MGM security guard, transport the casino's money toward an exit where an armored truck awaits. Suddenly, two gunmen confront them. One grabs the courier's guns, then snatches 3 money pouches containing nearly $350,000 in cash. Then the men flee through a side exit. The guards call the Las Vegas police and the FBI. Detectives and agents respond to the casino and interview the guards, who give investigators a rough description of their assailants.
Any kind of logo on the jacket?
Not that I saw.
Okay.
It was two Latinos. I'm pretty sure it was Latinos.
What kind of guns were they?
They were not
The robbers left no physical evidence at the scene.
Right. 2 semi-automatic weapons.
Right.
They were standing like right here, and I guess.
The MGM, like all Las Vegas casinos, has a vast network of security cameras. FBI agents review video of the crime. Special Agent Henry Schlump observes the way the lead gunman brandished his weapons, which suggests he could be a dangerous individual.
Seeing a subject commit a robbery with a gun in each hand is not typical. That would be a rare occurrence. And I think it would portend the violence that the subject was capable of.
We got two-fisted gunslinger. Okay, can you give me the outside tape? They go directly out to the sidewalk and down the street.
Agents also watch footage captured by the hotel's exterior cameras, which reveals that the robbers fled across the street toward a neighboring hotel. Investigators go to the Hotel San Remo and review surveillance video from their exterior cameras. They see the robbers get into a pickup truck driven by a third man.
Stop.
But the video cannot provide a viable lead, according to FBI Special Agent Castle Nishimoto.
The quality of the film wasn't as such that we could make out exactly the numbers on the plates. We had a few partials on the numbers, but we couldn't see the whole plate. We could only read the first 3 numbers, but we couldn't get the 3 alphabet letters after that.
Despite having only a general description, police begin searching for the getaway truck. However, they are unable to immediately find it. Nearly 2 months later, continued search efforts lead to a break in the case. Once again at the San Remo. In the casino's parking lot, a Las Vegas Metro Police detective locates what looks like the getaway truck. The truck's plate numbers match the partial numbers seen on the surveillance tape. To investigators, it seems the robbers waited for the heat to die down after the robbery, then drove the getaway truck back to the San Remo. The detective runs a check on the vehicle's identification number and discovers it was reported stolen almost 3 weeks before the MGM robbery. Running a check on the license plate, investigators find it was stolen from a disabled car kept at a Las Vegas storage area.
Can I help you?
Yes, sir. Investigator Fleetwood, we're looking into some theft that occurred.
The manager of the facility tells the Las Vegas Metro Police detective he knows nothing about the theft. He suggests he speak to the watchman who lives at the storage area, Jose Vigoa.
There he is, right there.
The manager points out Vigoa in the distance. The detective asks the manager to have the watchman contact him, but Vigoa never calls. Months pass, and the investigation runs out of leads. June 28, 1999, 9 months after the MGM robbery. At the Desert Inn Casino, an armored van is making its rounds collecting cash. Two gunmen confront the guards. The guard inside the van is hit in the arm. His partner returns fire, but is hit 3 times in the leg. Through their training, the guards know to aim for the chest. Their bullets slam into the gunman, but the shots fail to stop them. They must be wearing body armor. The guard on the ground manages to get to the safety of the armored vehicle. The van's driver heads to a nearby hospital. Both guards survive the gun battle. Within minutes, Las Vegas police and the FBI converge at the Desert Inn. A casino employee tells investigators she saw the gunman flee the scene in a light-colored SUV, and police put out an alert. FBI Special Agent Richard Beasley studies the crime scene.
My initial impression was that it was a very bold attempt to take an armored car. These guys weren't afraid to use the firepower that they had with them. There was a number of brass casings in one area and a number of brass casings in the other area where the armored car guards had shot their rounds.
Agents believe that the gunmen who committed this attack were not the same ones who held up the MGM. The MO was not the same. In the investigators' experience, criminals rarely change their MO if it has worked in the past. FBI Special Agent Brett Shields.
They were successful at MGM indoors, waiting for the guards indoor. The Desert Inn is outdoors, like they're trying to get the whole truck.
10 minutes after arriving at the scene, Agent Beasley gets a call that the getaway car has been found.
I'll be right there.
One of the uniform officers had been patrolling the area looking for this vehicle, and they found it in the parking lot of a small motel. We looked inside and we could see shell casings on the floor, and there was a .45 caliber shell casing on one of the running boards.
Investigators also find an empty water bottle inside the vehicle. It is preserved in the hopes of recovering DNA evidence from it. Nearby, agents interview a man who says he saw the men who were driving the SUV.
There was a witness there that had been walking his dog that had witnessed the exchange of the vehicle. One robber goes to the back of a pickup truck, simply threw a bag in the back, made a loud noise, what we think is the guns. The other two jump into the front of this pickup truck.
Let's go, man. Let's go. What's the matter? The key. The key doesn't work, man. Let's go. Go back.
They were having difficulties actually getting the vehicle started.
The witness then saw the two men frantically working on the steering column.
What do you mean the key doesn't work? Figure it out. Come on, hotwire something.
He didn't know whether they were messing with it to hotwire it or what.
Finally, the pickup roared to life and the men took off. Agents wonder why the robbers had to hotwire their own getaway vehicle. Presumably, they had placed the truck there ahead of time. So why didn't they have the keys?
That was strange to us. We couldn't understand why that would have taken place.
Then agents notice a pickup of the same make and model parked nearby.
We thought maybe because there were two vehicles that were very similar, parked close together, they had jumped into the other vehicle, and of course their keys don't work, so they had to hotwire it.
Agent Slump and I go back to the rear of this second pickup truck, and we notice that there's a license plate rubber banded over another license plate.
The FBI runs the vehicle identification number on the pickup and discovers that it belongs to an ex-con named Pedro Duarte. The crime scene investigator finds fingerprints on the top license plate. Investigators run the prints and discover they belong to Duarte. This suggests that Duarte rubber-banded the stolen plate to his own pickup. At the request of FBI agents, the witness agrees to describe the three men he saw to a police artist. Investigators hope that composite sketches will aid in identifying suspects. The next day, investigators travel to Pedro Duarte's house to ask him about his truck.
So I had the composite with me, and when we go to knock on the door and Pedro Duarte comes to the door, it's like, holy cow.
Duarte bears a close resemblance to the man in the sketch.
Mind if we come in and talk to you for a moment? Sure.
When asked about his truck, Duarte insists that it was stolen. Police records show that it was in fact reported stolen, but that was hours after the attempted robbery at the Desert Inn.
His story was that he and his wife had had personal problems, and so he went down just to walk the strip. So he had parked his vehicle and was just walking up and down the strip, and that he had fallen asleep on a bench.
Duarte claims that when he woke up, his truck was gone.
You know, just nonsense. None of his story was true. He's just cocky as cocky can be, and his English was fine until we started getting to the harder questions, and then no habla.
Duarte suddenly claims he cannot speak English.
The Metro Sergeant was even talking to him in Spanish, and he still claimed that he couldn't understand. It was a very frustrating interview.
Discrimination.
Investigators are convinced Duarte is involved, but are stymied by a lack of direct evidence against him.
We still didn't have any answers. I mean, was he up to no good on the strip? Absolutely. Could he have been doing jewelry robberies or purse snatchings or anything else and try to disguise his vehicle and this just be coincidental? Absolutely.
Man, I don't know what you're even talking about, man.
So we weren't comfortable enough to arrest him at the time. And we got nowhere with the interview.
Hoping to get a positive identification on Duarte, Agent Shields shows a photo lineup to the only witness who has seen the faces of the Desert Inn robbers.
I can't tell.
And our witness did not pick him out of a photo lineup. So we had to go back to other means, trying to identify his associates, his money trail. Just kind of a full blitz on Duarte at that point.
In an effort to gather any incriminating evidence against their suspect, investigators set up surveillance on Duarte. But after weeks of watching, they come up with nothing. The Mandalay Bay Casino, October 11th, 1999, 4 months after the attempted robbery at the Desert Inn. 2 armed couriers pick up $88,000 and transport it to their armored truck. Suddenly, 2 gunmen ambush them. In the fall of 1998, 2 gunmen execute a brazen robbery inside Las Vegas's MGM Grand Casino, taking almost $350,000. Now, a year later, couriers collecting money at the Mandalay Bay Casino are under attack. The robbers quickly disarm them and flee with $88,000 in cash.
Let's go, let's go.
At the FBI's Las Vegas field office, agents review the surveillance video of the robbery. Special Agent Brett Shields suspects that the gunman who robbed the MGM committed this robbery as well.
When we saw the manner of how this robbery had taken place at Mandalay Bay, there was a lot of similarities. The way the approach was made, the way the weapons were held, weapons in both hands, arms extended, and it did trigger some thoughts that the MGM and the Mandalay Bay are connected.
We've been working on this for a long time.
Investigators pore over the case, searching for any clue that might have been missed. Special Agent Richard Beasley.
Brett Shields and I were in the office. We were talking about the case, what we could do to develop additional leads, make sure all the leads that we had been covered.
And I'm looking over his shoulder and I recognize the name on there.
Vigoa is the watchman at the storage facility that detectives never got to interview.
And at that time, it kind of lights went off for me that I told Agent Beasley, hey, if this is actually Jose Vigoa, then, you know, that's our guy.
Jose Vigoa. Who's that?
Agent Shields has a history with Vigoa.
I had arrested Jose Vigoa in 1990. That was one of the first arrests that I had made as an FBI agent.
In 1990, the FBI was investigating Cuban immigrant Jose Vigoa for cocaine trafficking and went to a storage facility with a warrant to search his unit.
As they're entering to go do the search, Jose Vigoa speeds away. An agent is standing in front of the gate and he actually tries to run him over. That's his personality, you know, that's just the type of person that he is, that he's not going to be taken by the police without a fight, and no respect for life or anybody but himself.
Investigators checked Vigoa's storage unit and found a scale covered with cocaine residue and his fingerprints. He was later convicted of drug trafficking and assaulting a federal officer. He served 6 years in prison for his crimes. Shields remembers that Pedro Duarte was questioned in connection to the recent Desert Inn shootings. Duarte is Jose Vigoa's brother-in-law. To investigators, it now seems that the 2 robberies inside the casinos are connected to the attack outside the Desert Inn. They all appear to be the work of one group of robbers. Agents decide to show Vigoa's probation officer the casino surveillance video to see if she can identify any of the robbers. The next day at the FBI office, Vigoa's probation officer watches surveillance tapes of both the MGM and Mandalay Bay robberies. She says one of the gunmen resembles Vigoa, but can't make a positive ID. Disappointed but undeterred, agents put Vigoa under surveillance. According to his probation officer, Vigoa earns only $10,000 a year and lives in a shack at the storage facility where he works. But Agent Beasley discovers that Vigoa actually lives in a middle-class house.
We did financial background checks, and the house was in fact purchased just a few weeks after the MGM robbery. It was interesting to us because about $19,000 in cash had been put down on this house. The house was not purchased in Vigoa's name. It was purchased in the name of a person named Oscar Cisneros.
Agents suspect Vigoa is using Cisneros as a financial front to hide his purchases.
We knew after talking to Vigoa's probation officer that Vigoa was supposed to be working a labor-type job. He wasn't supposed to have much money. So if assets started showing up in Vigoa's name, that would certainly raise suspicion to his probation officer.
Vigoa's finances are questionable, but they are not an indication of guilt.
We didn't have any eyewitness identification of him in these robberies, and just because somebody's spending a large amount of cash doesn't necessarily mean that they were involved in a robbery. If Vigoa was a convicted drug dealer, we didn't know if he was back in the drug trade, which would account for him having a large amount of cash.
The results of the financial background check are not enough to move the investigation forward.
We didn't have probable cause yet for any kind of warrant to go search Vigoa's house or his property or his vehicles. It just wasn't there yet. Even if we had even the minimal for a search warrant, we may not be ready to actually do it yet. We want to develop additional so we have enough to make the arrest and get a conviction, not just get enough for a search warrant for the house.
Agents continue to watch Vigoa. Five months later, on March 3rd, 2000, in the neighboring suburb of Henderson, local police and the FBI respond to a report of an assault on an armored vehicle in front of the Ross Dress for Less department store. Two guards are dead.
When you looked up, you see the perpetrators.
When we arrived, there was police tape up. There was cars all over the place. Witnesses were scattered, and there was the body of one of the security officers in the parking lot next to the truck. It was not a good scene.
Investigators work to determine the series of events that led to the two deaths.
We started interviewing people in the parking lot, people in the surrounding businesses. A lot of people had heard the shots. Some people had seen the shots. Some people had seen the vehicle driving away. Everybody had a small piece to the puzzle that we were trying to put together.
According to witnesses, around 11:15 a.m., an armored van parked in front of the department store. One guard went inside to pick up the store's deposit, passing between two minivans which witnesses reported seeing parked there since early that morning. When the guard returned with the money, the gunman pounced. The courier drew his weapon and fired, hitting one gunman in the knee. But another gunman opened fire with an assault rifle. The guard died almost instantly. The gunman's fury was then leveled on the van's driver. The lead gunman grabbed the money bags. All three men made their escape in what witnesses described as a beige sedan. Their total take was less than $5,000.
The amount of violence used in that in that crime was just incredible. The number of rounds that were fired and the brutal cold-bloodedness that these security officers were killed was just uncalled for.
The details of the attack lead agents to believe this robbery was perpetrated by the same group they are currently investigating.
The lying in wait, the attempt on the armored car, the high-power weapons, the shots fired, it all matched with the Desert Inn attempt.
The crime scene technician processes the minivans used by the robbers, but he is unable to recover any evidence that could help identify them. As investigators continue working into the early evening, they experience a moment of unexpected and chilling sadness.
When it's getting around 5 o'clock, cell phone starts ringing on the dead guard, and it was just a feeling of emptiness that it's kind of every cop's nightmare, you know, that you're not coming home that particular night, and then your wife or your significant other is calling, wanting to know where you're at and why you're not home. The phone kept ringing, and everybody wanted to pick up that phone and talk on the other end, and it was just a bad feeling.
Investigators at the scene decide to join forces to track down the killers.
We formed kind of an ad hoc task force within the FBI, Henderson Police Department, and Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, in order to identify the group of individuals who were doing these crimes. Everybody's goal was the same, to try to catch these guys.
But without any evidence implicating their suspects, they will need to move quickly if they are to capture them before they strike again. In Henderson, Nevada, a group of heavily armed robbers continue their violent rampage with an assault on an armored van, killing 2 guards in a hail of gunfire. A few hours after the attack, police locate the robbers' abandoned getaway car in a parking lot. FBI Special Agent Henry Schlumpf investigates.
We got there, we could see there was blood in the driver's seat of the vehicle.
Witnesses to the robbery had reported that one of the gunmen had been shot. A crime scene technician collects the blood as it may become valuable later as DNA evidence. Agents run the plates on the getaway car and the vans left by the killers at the scene of the robbery and find that they were all stolen from a rental car lot. The task force is unable to definitively identify suspects in the robbery, but they are confident it is connected to a string of similar heists over the past 18 months. Those crimes have been tied circumstantially to ex-cons Jose Vigoa and Pedro Duarte, Vigoa's brother-in-law. But without any hard evidence implicating the pair, the investigation stalls. June 3rd, 2000, 3 months after the Ross killings, the Bellagio Hotel and Casino. It's shortly after 6 a.m. Casino employees are counting money in the main cashier's cage.
There's a robbery!
Gunmen force frightened employees into a corner and then clean out the money drawers.
Don't move!
The robbers take over $144,000 in cash. But the gunmen are not finished. They want more. They target a nearby change booth. This time, the robbers allow the cashier to leave. They steal an additional $10,000. The security guard notices the fleeing cashier on a surveillance camera and zooms in for a closer look.
This is Zeke. The security room, we have a problem.
The guard alerts outside security as he watches the robbers flee the building through an emergency exit.
There they are.
The robbers jump into their getaway van and speed off with more than $150,000. They're unaware that Bellagio guards in an unmarked van are following them and alerting police. However, once the robbers realize they're being followed, they react with violence. One bullet strikes the security van's tire, ending the pursuit. Fortunately, none of the guards are injured. They provide police with the make, model, and license plate number for the vehicle. When FBI Special Agent Brett Shields hears the details of the heist and the robbers' violent escape, he is convinced it is connected to their suspects.
And it shows the mentality of these guys that they weren't going to get taken. They were going to shoot it out, they were going to run, they were going to do everything they could to get away.
At the Bellagio's security office, agents ask Jose Vigoa's probation officer to watch surveillance video of the crime, hoping for a positive ID.
We showed the video, and she said, yeah, that was Jose Vigoa doing that robbery.
Sure.
I swear to it in court.
This is the break agents need to bring in Vigoa. They obtain an arrest warrant, but they worry that this ruthless killer will not be taken down without a fight. In Las Vegas, the FBI has finally identified ex-con Jose Vigoa as the suspected leader of a violent band of robbers who has already killed 2 people. Agents obtain an arrest warrant for Vigoa and move to apprehend him. FBI Special Agent Brett Shields.
They had a vehicle in front. The Metro SWAT team was going to pull up, exit the vehicle, and take him down at gunpoint. The SWAT officers got out and aimed their weapons at him. FBI, get out of the car now! I pulled around the SWAT vehicle. He and we're side by side, and I'm actually showing him my credentials, and he's acting like, who are we? And the vehicle in front of him wasn't close enough to his vehicle. So he was able simply to pull out and to proceed.
Chase is extremely dangerous, reaching speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. The suspect refuses to slow even for a second. After a few miles, Vigoa loses control of his vehicle and hits a tree.
He exits the vehicle and flees. He's gone. He's jumping over fences. He's going.
Las Vegas SWAT officers chase after Vigoa while Agent Shields inspects the wrecked vehicle. To his surprise, he finds Vigoa's wife in the passenger seat. She's taken into custody, but is later released when investigators determined she was not involved in her husband's crimes. In the back seat, Agent Shields finds Vigoa's daughter.
His wife is in the vehicle along with his little girl. Total disregard for them. Doesn't care that he's leaving them to face the police and all the weapons that's going to be drawn on them. He's taking care of himself.
SWAT officers finally catch up to Vigoa and take him down.
I arrive right as he's getting picked up. He's just arrogant, You can't touch me, I'm the man. So I said, well, we can touch you, and basically told him this, it ends here. I mean, he's not going to see the light of day again.
To ensure a conviction, agents need more proof.
Police, open up! It's the police, open the door!
Armed with a search warrant, they enter Vigoa's house and find nearly $100,000 in cash, but no evidence directly connecting him to any of the robberies. With Vigoa in custody, FBI Special Agent Richard Beasley moves in on Oscar Cisneros, Vigoa's financial frontman.
We needed to talk with Cisneros about the assets that were in his name being used by Vigoa. We identified ourselves and told him that Jose Vigoa had just been arrested for the Bellagio robbery and that we needed to talk with him about his relationship with Vigoa and these robberies that have been happening in Las Vegas. I told him that we also wanted to search his house, and Oscar said, that's fine, I'll talk with you and you can search my house.
Good, thanks.
So right there on the hood of my car, he executed a consent to search form, which gave us his permission to search his house.
Yeah, you can go ahead and come on in.
Investigators search while Agent Beasley and a Henderson detective question Cisneros.
Appreciate you bringing us in here. I wanted to ask you about this house and this guy.
Look, I've known him for a long
We
time.
talked with Oscar about his relationship with Vigoa, about the assets that had been put in Cisneros' name on behalf of Vigoa, and where the money had come from in order to purchase those assets. Cisneros told us that he was just doing a friend a favor. It wasn't his money, but he wanted to help his friend out. We asked him if he had any contact with Vigoa in the last several weeks. He said, yeah, Vigoa brought over some money a few days ago. He didn't know where the money was from, didn't know how much it was, and it was kind of in repayment for him being a good friend to put these assets in his name.
Agent Beasley pressures him, but Cisneros says he knows nothing about any crimes.
Again, he was very calm, collected. He claimed not to know anything about anything. He was just trying to work hard and pay his bills and support his family and just live a normal life.
In the bedroom, investigators find a box full of cash. Suspicious, but not incriminating.
A lot of hundreds, 50s, 5s, 10s.
So, where did you get this from?
After searching for an hour with no results, an investigator on a hunch decides to search for any hidden compartments.
I've got something here.
And uncovers a motherlode of evidence.
Ammunition, body armor.
Agent Beasley talks with the searchers.
And they said, Rich, we found it. We found a secret compartment in his closet. Appears to have everything in it that's going to be what we've been looking for.
The agent needs to know if the items in the closet were used in the robberies.
So I immediately went back where Oscar was sitting. I said, Oscar, we found it. We found your closet. What's going to be in there? He kind of sighed. He looked down. He said, the guns, everything. So at that point, I knew that he was going to be more of a player than what I thought he possibly could have been.
The agent asks him about a scar on his knee.
So tell me.
And I could see the inside of his right knee, and there was like a puncture wound.
I got shot.
Shot? Where?
At Ross.
We were just ecstatic. We identified one of the people who had been shot at the Ross, and we were well on our way to solving that killing.
All right. How much much time am I looking at?
He started asking us what kind of penalty he was looking at, what kind of prison time. And we were very honest with him. We told him, you know, we couldn't tell exactly for sure what he was looking at, but it could very well be the death penalty because of the murders with the aggravated robbery. And he continued to ask us more about the potential penalties.
Why do you need the death penalty? I could always put in a good word for you. But I mean, you know, you're going to have to help us out here.
All right, look.
Eventually, he confessed to the Ross killings, the Desert Inn attempted armored car robbery, the MGM robbery, the Mandalay Bay robbery, the Bellagio robbery.
Okay, the lead guy is Jose Vigoa. That's the lead guy.
Based on Oscar's confession, we learned that Vigoa was the ringleader. He was the one who was organizing everything, deciding which hits to do. His brother-in-law, Pedro Duarte, had been involved in the robberies until the Desert Inn. After that, they brought in another individual, Luis Suarez, and he had taken part in the Ross killing as well. I think Cisneros eventually confessed to us because he truly had remorse about what had happened, not so much with the robberies, but with the killing of the armored car guards.
As Cisneros continues to confess, investigators process the evidence in the bedroom.
They were taking each piece out, cataloging it, making sure that nothing was disturbed as far as fingerprints or DNA type evidence. Toward the end of the search, they'd found what appeared to be pipe bombs in there. They were 4-inch black PVC type pipes with some type of circuit board attached to them.
Investigators confront Cisneros about the bombs, asking if they are real.
And Oscar said, no, not really. Didn't really give us a warm feeling that we could rely on what he was telling us. He said, I'm going to ask you one more time, what are these things? He said, oh, we were just playing around. You don't really have to worry about them. It was that point, because of the vagueness of the answers, that we decided to go ahead and evacuate the house and the surrounding neighbors.
Agents take the evidence and abandon the house, leaving behind the pipe bombs.
We called the bomb squad, and they came in and looked at the devices. They couldn't x-ray them because they were black PVC, and so they made the decision to go ahead and just explode them right there in the bedroom.
Based on Cisneros' confession, investigators arrest Pedro Duarte for being the getaway driver at the Desert Inn.
Pedro Duarte, warrant for your arrest. Going off this wall.
Investigators move to arrest the final robber, Luis Suarez, but he has fled the state. Ballistics experts test the weapons found at Cisneros' house and match them to bullets and shell casings from the Ross killings and the Desert Inn shooting. Experts also find critical evidence against Vigoa.
We found Vigoa's fingerprint on one of the bullets inside one of the magazines that was in Cisneros' closet.
Prosecutors hold Oscar Cisneros at the Clark County Detention Center and intend to use his testimony at trial against the other robbers.
We felt like it was a pretty tight package. We had Cisneros' confession, we had all the physical evidence for the guns and the money and the clothing that we'd found in the closet. So we felt like it was coming together very well.
But one event would put the entire case in jeopardy. In Las Vegas, investigators have arrested 3 men connected to a violent robbery group. The leader, Jose Vigoa, his brother-in-law, Pedro Duarte, and Oscar Cisneros, who confessed everything to federal agents and implicated a 4th man, Luis Suarez, in the robberies. But on October 7th, 2000, The case weakens when Cisneros hangs himself in his cell. FBI Special Agent Richard Beasley.
We learned later from the officers who investigated the suicide at the detention center that Vigoa had been sending messages up to Cisneros to do the right thing. I think that Cisneros didn't want to put his family through any more problems, and he just didn't want to deal with it, so he took the easy way out and killed himself.
When Cisneros dies, his confession dies with him, since it would be inadmissible in court. The prosecution team turns to forensic science to tie the other robbers to the crime. DNA evidence from the recovered water bottle and ski masks links Vigoa, Duarte, and Suarez to the crimes. The blood evidence recovered belonged to the now deceased Cisneros. While prosecutors prepare for trial, agents track down the remaining gunman, Luis Suarez, who fled Las Vegas and is hiding in Florida. FBI Special Agent Brett Shields.
We went down to Florida, discredited all his alibis, and then he was ultimately arrested for this crime.
In the fall of 2003, 5 years after their spree of robbery and murder began, Suarez, Duarte, and Vigoa go to trial in Las Vegas. Luis Suarez plea bargains to 1 count of armed robbery and receives a sentence of 6 to 15 years. Pedro Duarte takes his chances at trial and is convicted of 2 counts of attempted murder and other charges. He is sentenced to 16 to 70 years. In order to avoid the death penalty, Jose Vigoa pleads guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and 44 other charges. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It took the combined efforts of 3 law enforcement agencies to bring this vicious gang of robbers to justice.
This case was solved not by the FBI, but by the cooperation between the FBI, Henderson Police Department, and Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. It was just a great feeling to be able to wrap up a case like this. Obviously, there were many victims, not just the security officers who were killed, but their families and the people inside the casinos and the people who were traumatized watching these armored car robberies go down and the casino robberies. There's a lot of people really shook up over this, and to take these guys out of the mix was a very good feeling.
And the next time someone threatens the safety of the citizens of Las Vegas, local police and the FBI will be there to stop them. He starts out cool, simply demanding cash. But then, fiery violence. He's fast, tough, and well protected. Investigators vow to catch him and risk their own lives to do it. At every turn, they face dangerous surprises from a violent felon on the run.
In the Southwest, one serial bank robber claimed his loot went to the poor. But this thief was no folk hero. He had a gun and was willing to shoot. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The gunman was desperate to stay free, a threat to anyone in his way. The FBI and U.S. Marshals teamed up to capture a resourceful criminal who proved he would never stop fighting.
Albuquerque, New Mexico. On December 29, 1998, in the city's northeast section, for the employees and customers of a local bank, the day started much like any other. What they did not know was that a man who had already robbed one bank earlier that morning was about to make another withdrawal.
Have a good day. You too. Sir, I can help you over here. Sir?
When the robber approaches the teller, he asks her to give him money from the cash drawer.
Okay, I have a gun, and this is a robbery.
Trained to always comply with a robber's request and avoid any dangerous confrontation, the teller gives the man what he asks for, and more. She slips the man a bundle of cash containing an exploding dye pack.
I have this gun, and I will use it, sir.
The robber slips out as quietly as he entered.
Albuquerque 911, where is your emergency? This is a bank robbery?
The alarm goes out to local police. And because bank robbery is a federal offense, the FBI. Special Agents Scott Campbell and John Tanberg respond from the FBI's Albuquerque resident agency. It begins as a routine call for Special Agent Tanberg.
Albuquerque has had per capita more than its share of bank robberies. In the late 90s, we were in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 bank robberies per year.
What do you look at specifically?
Yet this case will be anything but routine. Agents learned the bandit was strangely calm.
Most of the people in the bank had no idea that it had even been robbed. There was no commotion, there was no what they would think and had seen previously on TV of bank robberies with shots fired or people yelling.
The tellers remember nothing distinctive about him.
Well, the physical description that we received was of a white male, possibly Hispanic, dark hair, average build, wearing sunglasses, fairly neat haircut, wearing a ball cap, and not very distinctive clothing.
Despite a thorough examination, technicians recover no usable prints from the teller counter or doors.
Appreciate that.
They find no other physical evidence.
We tried anyway.
Investigators suspect an electronic witness may have observed the robber.
The primary security countermeasure that a bank will have would be surveillance cameras. Sometimes they're high quality, sometimes they're not.
In this case, the cameras were not of much help.
You know, he comes up.
And you didn't even see the backside.
They show the robber, but the quality is not good.
We didn't retrieve any significant information from the surveillance tapes of either of those two bank robberies. They weren't particularly good images. We didn't get a good angle of the face. I believe that there may have been a good shot of the top of his ball cap, but nothing that gave us any significant facial features.
The robbers simply walked into two banks in one day, took their cash and walked out. He left no prints, no evidence, and beat the bank's surveillance systems. He left the FBI nothing that would help them identify him.
There wasn't a whole lot of information that we had to work with. We didn't believe that this was somebody that had hit any of the Albuquerque area banks in the past. We were not in a position to connect him to anything that had occurred prior to this. So in our minds, this could potentially be a traveler.
Take their statements, I'm going to call this in.
Agents spread out across the area and talk with everyone who lived near the bank. They are looking for anyone who may have seen the robber. Anyone who could give them a positive ID. Agents get a break when they find a witness.
A neighbor who lived behind the bank saw a man running out of the bank and around the corner back behind the bank.
And then, a cloud of red mist. Agents realize it must have been the dye pack. This is their man.
This witness provided a full license plate number of a vehicle registered in the state of Nevada.
This confirms their suspicions.
1583, respond code 3.
The robber does not appear to be from Albuquerque.
With that license plate, we ran through our dispatch center registration in Nevada and came up with a registered owner and an address of the vehicle was registered at.
But the address is to a motel off the Las Vegas Strip, perhaps a cover to throw off the cops. The agents have hit a dead end. They try another tack and run the plate number through a credit bureau. They get a hit. The FBI finds the loan is registered to another address in Wyoming. An agent there interviews the registered owner. He asks him where he was on the day the robberies occurred.
I was interviewing for this position right now.
The man replies he was in Wyoming, interviewing for his job as a postal worker. An alibi corroborated by his supervisor.
He was a law-abiding citizen and did not have any knowledge of any criminal activity that was associated with his vehicle that was in Albuquerque.
The man explains he no longer has possession of the car. His ex-wife Carlita uses it, and she lives in Albuquerque.
We eventually tracked down the ex-wife of the vehicle's owner. We made contact with her and spoke to her about her vehicle, where it had been, who had control of it, who has other keys to it, and where it was the previous day during the time frame of the bank robberies.
Carlita says that on the day of the robbery, she was at work. She explains she has a big family in the area and many people borrow her car.
She did not know who had her car the previous day and that it should have been parked in its parking spot near her apartment. She did, however, tell us that the vehicle was a little lower on gas than what she had left it at.
Carlita gives her consent for a search.
Remembering from the previous day that the dye pack had exploded, we thought perhaps there would be evidence of the red dye inside the vehicle. However, we did not find any.
It's possible that the witness got the license plate number wrong. Possible, but not likely.
I had reservations with what she had told us, simply because it was too coincidental that this vehicle that was seen as the getaway vehicle at the robbery the previous day and registered in the state of Nevada was actually located in Albuquerque.
No hard evidence links Carlita to the robberies, but something about this seems suspicious.
Thank you so much.
Agents suspect there is some connection.
Although she did not remain a suspect, she remained a person that we wanted to stay in contact with and a person of interest in these investigations.
Police and the FBI have exhausted their leads. The robberies go unsolved. And then, several months later, the mysterious bandit strikes again. He hits a series of banks in a very short period of time. His MO remains the same. He gets in, gets the cash, and gets out. And never leaves any evidence behind.
Beginning around the middle of March of 1999 and continuing up through the end of May of 99, approximately 6 banks were robbed. From the evidence that we had obtained in the form of video surveillance, descriptions by the witnesses and the bank tellers, and just general demeanor, we came to the conclusion that we had a serial bank robber working in Albuquerque.
Local police and the FBI must identify the lone bandit and stop him before someone gets hurt. A serial bank robber terrorizes Albuquerque, New Mexico, sometimes striking multiple banks in one day. Local police and the FBI work together to identify him and stop his rampage. As the bandit's spree continues, he grows more aggressive, according to FBI Special Agent John Tanberg.
He began to take more money by going behind the teller counters and causing the tellers to take money out of several teller drawers.
The robber becomes more unpredictable and violent. Agents begin to fear that the longer he continues robbing banks, the more likely someone is going to get hurt, or worse.
There were occasions when it appeared that the offender may be utilizing narcotics, because there were occasions when he was quite physical with people that seemed very inappropriate. It appeared that the offender was becoming more and more desperate in that regard.
He's now much more willing to use his gun. He surprises tellers by announcing the money will go to starving children in Mexico. After one robbery in June, the FBI gets better security camera photos of the gunman. With no physical evidence, the photos are agents' best lead.
We like to have public interest as active as possible when we have a serial offender. We'll get the media to cooperate and to place the information into the newspaper columns, television. People will very often respond to Crime Stoppers and call in tips.
Because the robber tends to hit in sprees, and all the robberies took place in the northeast quadrant of Albuquerque, the agents stake out banks in the area. They hope they can set a trap, and the robber will walk into it. But because they have so little to go on, the agents must rely on blind luck. They follow up on every tip, but nothing pans out.
The robber was getting more and more active. It was becoming more and more desirable to arrest him and prosecute him. And that becomes a little bit frustrating when you have an offender that you're not able to identify, even though you have done your best efforts to do so. The robber never touched anything to produce any fingerprints that we could use as evidence. The robber didn't leave anything behind.
The FBI will need to appeal to the public for help.
At one point,
they need a hook to capture the public's imagination.
on top of the counter.
The FBI bank robbery squad assigns nicknames to serial robbers.
A lot of food for the children in Mexico.
The media will latch onto the case a little bit better sometimes that way, and it gets the public interest up.
He walked out real nice.
The FBI dubs this one Robin the Hood for his dubious claims that the stolen cash goes to starving children.
He just walked right on out.
With each new robbery, local media jumps on the story, and the bandit likes the attention.
Well, the robber seemed to revel in the name that we attached to him. He seemed to like the idea of being called Robin the Hood. There were occasions when he walked in and walked up to the victim teller and said, "Hey, you know who I am. I'm Robin the Hood."
Despite the name, agents doubt the thief is giving his money away. They suspect that, like most bank robbers, he uses the cash to finance a drug habit or other criminal activities. Whoever he is, he's good, leaving no clues behind. Agents keep watching and waiting for him to strike again. It seems they are at the mercy of the bank robber. After 14 robberies, the only possible lead to Robin the Hood is Carlita's car. FBI Special Agent Scott Campbell keeps talking with her.
I spoke to her on the phone probably 5 or 6 times throughout the 8 months, because in the back of my mind I knew that she had something to do with the robberies, or she can provide some information or evidence that would lead us to the robber.
Finally, in August 1999, the case breaks open when Carlita, by now 8 months pregnant, contacts Agent Campbell.
Yes, with Agent
She calls me and says, "We need to talk. I have some information that'll solve the cases."
She says the robber is her husband, Byron Chubbuck. She'll explain more in person.
and so I make a time to meet her the next morning at her apartment.
The agents pull Chubbuck's record and learn he's got a history of violence and gang affiliations.
I'm not sure what's in St. Louis. Maybe
Carlita said she can talk now because Chubbuck moved to St. Louis. Agents had offered a more secure location for the interview, but she declined.
I think she is. I mean,
She said that she didn't feel that there was any danger, that she was with him when he had loaded his truck and had departed for St. Louis. So she felt safe and secure being interviewed at her apartment, and she insisted that we interview her there.
Still, agents approach with caution, wanting to avoid a surprise confrontation with Chubbuck.
Prior to going in the apartment, I made a phone call into the apartment to see if he was around and if she had any other information on him since we spoke the evening before. Once we were comfortable that he was not around, I radioed into our dispatch using our car radios to tell them the address we were going to be at. As we entered the apartment, Agent Tamberg and I just made a quick cursory look around to ensure that no one else was there.
Carlita positively identifies the man in the bank photos as Byron Chubbuck. She confirms he's a member of Albuquerque's notorious Brewtown gang and says lately he's been growing more violent.
And she told us that the reason why she was coming forward at this time is that she was scared for her life and that of her unborn
Things
son.
are getting way out of hand.
Carlita pleads with him to arrest Chubbuck quickly.
Out of my life. I want him out of here.
He had threatened her and other family members that even if he wasn't around, if they ever talked to law enforcement, that his gang would kill them and other members of their family, or else create great harm to their family.
The confrontation agents wanted to avoid is seconds away. When a violent robber hits 14 banks in the Albuquerque area, police and the FBI struggle to ID the man. The case stalls until a witness comes forward. FBI agents interview the wife of prime suspect Byron Chubbuck. Carlita tells Special Agent John Tanberg that she feels safe to talk because Chubbuck's left the area, but she's wrong.
During the course of the interview, we heard a vehicle pull up outside. She looked out the window and said, "It's him."
The agents decide to hide in the bedroom to avoid a confrontation that could make Chubbuck turn violent. Special Agent Scott Campbell.
We'd already made plans prior to the interview that should he be there or we encounter him, we would effect a probable cause arrest or a warrantless arrest. When we moved into the bedroom, both myself and Agent Tamberg unholstered our weapons to effect this arrest, should it come to that.
I couldn't see him from where I was standing, but I could hear his voice. Also, I could see her, and I knew that she was telling him that we were in there.
The agents have no way out. Confrontation with this violent thief is inevitable.
When you undergo this type of activity, time changes its dimension, and a split second seemed like about 5 minutes.
Fired 2 rounds through the common wall back at Chubbuck, or at least where I thought he was.
He paused in his shooting for a period of time, and I had become aware that possibly a half dozen rounds had gone off, and it appeared that he was reloading, and I was prepared in a position to shoot him if he did come into the room.
A figure appears.
Thinking that was Chubbuck, I began to pull the trigger. I realized it was her, and I was able to deflect the shot as the trigger was being squeezed off.
You all right? Got it. You okay? You sure? Yeah. Okay, stay right here.
They clear the place. He's gone.
It's amazing that there weren't any injuries sustained by myself and Scott Campbell. I think we both acknowledged that a greater power was watching over us that day because we had bullets that were coming through the wall at us, firing all through the room, and we didn't sustain any injuries of significance.
Target house, thank you. Okay.
Carlita is unharmed, though the bullet was so close it cut off some of her hair.
Are you feeling okay? Yeah, I think so. All right.
The agents stay where they are.
Not knowing where Chubbuck was, we made the decision to stay inside the apartment where at least we had a defensive firing position set up should he return to the apartment.
Local police are called to the scene. They rush to the aid of the FBI agents and secure the area.
The Albuquerque Police Department uniformed officers arrive and set up a little perimeter for us. We make contact with them verbally, and then we get out of the apartment.
Agents send the pregnant woman to a hospital to be checked out. Police fan out across the neighborhood to find out if anyone saw Chubbuck leave the area. No one reports seeing him go, and his car's still there. Lieutenant Terry Ward was in charge of the Albuquerque Police Department's Special Investigations Division.
It wasn't looking good that this was going to end peacefully. Given his past, his willingness to fight with police officers, the fact that he had just engaged in a gunfight with armed Bureau investigators gave us an indication that this might be his, a last stand.
Then an officer spots Chubbuck at the window of another apartment in the same building. And a standoff begins. Chubbuck is 2 apartments down from Carlita's, completely surrounded, but not ready to give up.
The Albuquerque Police Department had their hostage negotiator on the scene, trying to work with him, trying to get him to surrender, but there was no response.
Though authorities outside don't know it yet, the gunman keeps moving, making his way back to the scene of the shootout.
Byron, it's the FBI.
For 3 tense hours, there's no response from Chubbuck. But then Chubbuck makes a break from Carlita's apartment.
Took him down with a beanbag round from a shotgun. That's a round that's not a lethal form, but it will stun a person.
Amazingly, throughout the entire ordeal, no one is injured. Investigators arrest Chubbuck and transport him to the FBI office for booking. Byron Chubbuck pleads guilty to 14 counts of bank robbery, plus assault on federal agents, and is sentenced to 40 years in prison. Agents recover only a few dollars of the cash he stole.
We never believed that the money was being used to feed starving children. In particular, in retrospect, after getting to know Byron Chubbuck, the last thing he would do would be to feed starving children. His main interest was to feed his narcotics habit.
But Chubbuck doesn't plan to spend the next 40 years in jail. On December 21st, 2000, he announces he wants to fire his court-appointed lawyers and withdraw his guilty plea, a calculated move, one which requires him to attend a court hearing. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
After the hearing that day, he was being transported back to the Santa Fe Correctional Facility in Santa Fe County. He had obtained a handcuff key and was able to unlock his restraints from his hands and from his ankles, and was able to kick the van window out and escape through the van window. The driver heard a bang, and when he looked to see where it was, he thought he was in a traffic accident of some sort. Saw that Byron was halfway out the window.
The guards try to stop him, but he's moving fast and they can't leave the other prisoners.
Get back!
Byron Chubbuck is on the run. On December 21st, 2000, convicted bank robber Byron Chubbuck escapes in Albuquerque, New Mexico. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
Get back!
There were shots fired at Byron Chubbuck after he escaped by the correctional officers, but we don't believe that he was struck by any of those rounds.
Albuquerque police helped coordinate a massive manhunt.
There was a huge amount of law enforcement activity trying to find him. There was dogs searching the area, there was helicopters, there was door-to-door searches. There was a lot of police officers on the ground trying to find him.
A helicopter systematically searches for Chubbuck by flying in an aerial grid above the area where he escaped. It is clear that Chubbuck is dangerous. The FBI knows that a desperate man on the run is capable of anything. They need to find him quickly before innocent people are harmed. As time passes with no sign of the fugitive, they are forced to widen the search area. Investigators from 6 agencies try to lock the area down. They set up roadblocks. They search street by street, house by house. Despite the massive effort, they come up empty. Soon they learn why. A local woman calls police to report she'd been carjacked. She says an hour earlier, a man fitting Chubbuck's description forced her into her car. He ordered her to drive him to the outskirts of town, where he released her unharmed.
She's able to tell us where she dropped him off and what time, and gives a description of what he was wearing at that time.
Investigators focus the search there, but find nothing, and call off the manhunt at 9 p.m. By now it's been hours. He could be hundreds of miles away.
We were not able to locate where he was at that night, and we shifted gears a little bit to go from a manhunt to more of an investigation to try and locate where he might be, with interviews of family members and gang members and things like that.
Chubbuck could not have disappeared without help. Investigators pressure every known associate of the fugitive, yet all they get is resistance.
Look, I just told you, I don't know. Look, hey, get on the car.
The infamous Brewtown gang will not give up one of their own. Because of Chubbuck's desperate, violent actions, the U.S. Marshal Service places him on their 15 most wanted list.
After Chubbuck escaped, he was highly motivated to keep himself from being captured again. I believe that he would use any means at his disposal to keep himself from being put back into jail, which made him a dangerous person.
For days, the FBI watches places where the gang is known to hang out. They are looking for any suspicious activity. And they continue talking to people on the street. The FBI also monitors any recent bank robberies to see if Chubbuck has struck again. But the robber is strangely silent. For more than a week, there's no sign of the fugitive. Law enforcement knows Chubbuck has a heavy drug habit. Soon he'll need cash for more methamphetamines, a drug that makes the user feel powerful, paranoid, and super aggressive. To get the money, authorities believe he will begin robbing banks again, which will aid the effort to locate and apprehend the fugitive. While under the influence of the drug, there's no telling what he'll do next.
We felt that he was the highest priority to get back into custody.
But some investigators suspect Chubbuck is no longer in the country. Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
He had connections in Mexico. He could have easily fled to Mexico and hidden there. I didn't really think he would stay in the metropolitan area because his name and face was very familiar to everybody.
Put the money in the bag!
On January 16, 2001, a year and 5 months since his last heist, Chubbuck bursts back onto the scene in his old neighborhood. He robs a stunning 6 Albuquerque banks in a single day. A week later, he robs 3 more over 2 days.
Come on, come on, come on!
Special Agent John Tanberg has chased him from the beginning.
Chubbuck was a very, very brazen robber. He robbed banks that had been previously robbed by him. He didn't seem to care that the bank employees knew him already.
Each time, he brags to his victims that he's robbing the hood.
Please. Robbing the hood, baby! Robbing the hood!
And each time, the police and FBI find no evidence. Nothing that could lead them to their elusive bank robber.
He became more and more successful in his robberies, and he was more and more in the position to taunt law enforcement. We didn't receive significant physical evidence during the course of these robberies, and they occurred very often.
With each new heist, the fugitive's legend grows.
The investigation trying to apprehend Byron Chubbuck was the biggest case in Albuquerque in recent time. He was featured almost every night on the local news with pictures and photographs and Crime Stoppers telephone numbers and things like that to try and help apprehend him. And we got a lot of phone calls about his whereabouts or possible whereabouts.
Although agents chase every lead, Chubbuck remains elusive. The FBI suspects members of his Brewtown gang are protecting him. A dangerous band of hardened criminals. The gang has the network to hide a fugitive and the means to fight back. Albuquerque investigators are hunting for Byron Chubbuck, a violent bank robber on the run after a brazen escape from jail. He's being chased by multiple agencies, according to U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
The Albuquerque Police Department, the FBI, and the United States Marshal Service entered into a task force to aid each other in apprehending Byron Chubbuck. We pooled our resources together so there wouldn't be 3 different departments searching for the same person.
Despite a massive manhunt, Chubbuck is continuing to rob banks in Albuquerque. Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
He was robbing banks and getting away with it. So as long as he kept getting away with it, he would keep doing it. And that was one of the reasons we got together with the other agencies, in that he had to be stopped. He wasn't going to stop on his own. He wasn't going to leave, so he was still creating a problem for us.
Securing warrants, investigators tapped the phones of several of Chubbuck's associates. Intercepted conversations suggest the fugitive has fled across the border to Mexico. The FBI alerts the Border Patrol and contacts the Mexican Federal Police, asking them to watch for Chubbuck. Then agents intercept calls that indicate Chubbuck is back in Albuquerque. But the conversations are vague, with no direct reference to where he's hiding. Investigators maintain pressure on the Brewtown gang, making it clear that no one will have a moment's rest until Chubbuck is back in custody. It works. Early in the morning on February 5th, 2001, someone drops off a letter at a local radio station. It's from Byron Chubbuck. TJ Trout is the morning DJ for Albuquerque's 94 Rock.
It was intense. I mean, there were a lot of emotions going on when we get this. It's like, holy look at this. This is from Byron Chubbuck. The note said he had conditions for his surrender, that he wanted to get out to the public, but he wanted to be interviewed on 94 Rock. He wanted us to interview him on the morning show. He wanted to implicate some law enforcement individuals who he thought treated him badly and tried to kill him. And he wanted all this out, and if all this was out, he would peacefully surrender. We didn't know if it was from him. We didn't know if it was just from a prankster. We didn't know. And right after I got the note, I went on the air with the note, and I said, look, we just received a note from somebody, and if you are who we think you are, you have to call me back at this certain number, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. And that immediately, the phone rang.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is Robin. What's up, Doc? What do you want to know?
Well, I tell you what.
Are you trying to bust me?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
That'd be a bad thing.
No, this is what I'm trying to do. He sounded agitated, and he sounded like he was nervous. He's like any other guy would be that's looking over his shoulder. Everywhere you go, you're saying, well, is that a cop? Is that a cop? If you want me to put this on the air...
Here comes the helicopter, dude. Is that the feds?
No, it's not.
There's helicopters and everything.
He complains authorities are out to murder him.
These feds and these marshals and these police lie. Come on, give me a break. These guys started a shootout in my house with my pregnant wife.
The call ends ominously.
Is there any way that we can contact you?
Hell no, dude. I'm strapped down with so many machine guns and all kinds of cool I'm ready for whatever.
It's clear the fugitives prepared for another firefight. The station immediately calls the authorities.
I believe Chubbuck contacted the radio station to bolster his ego a little bit. I think he had a need to be in the public eye with the publicity that was surrounding his escape.
Anytime they do things to gain attention, it helps the police department. If they crawl underground and we never hear nor see of them again, it makes it much more difficult to catch them. But if they're doing things like robbing banks, seeking publicity, it gives us tabs that we can start from to keep looking for them.
Also, Scott Campbell.
The fugitive's ego might be his undoing, as agents now have a solid lead and physical evidence.
1999. This just came from the lab, and they just.
Lab technicians find Chubbuck's fingerprint on the letter, confirming it's authentic. Investigators review the security footage from the radio station.
We could tell, first of all, the person who delivered the letter was not Byron Chubbuck. We knew what he looked like, and this wasn't that individual. But we did have a good, clear picture of the individual that delivered it. And this eventually proved the straw that broke the camel's back.
One police detective recognizes the man as a sometime member of the Brewtown gang. His name is Ronald Baker.
Our mindset was that we would follow this individual without his knowledge, and he would lead us to Byron Chubbuck.
The Albuquerque gang squad sets up surveillance on Baker's mobile home. At one point, they see a man who resembles Chubbuck, but it's too dark for a positive ID. Somehow, they have to get inside that trailer. On the trail of fugitive Byron Chubbuck, Albuquerque authorities surveil a mobile home they think he's hiding in. At the same time, agents learn one of Chubbuck's gang associates has been arrested on state carjacking charges.
It's a good deal if you agree to wear a wire.
They use tougher federal sentencing rules to pressure him to cooperate, according to Special Agent John Tanberg.
We decided that it would be a simple matter to charge him federally so that there would be a penalty of significance that could be utilized as a means by which he would be persuaded to work for us.
The man doesn't want to do it, worried about gang retribution. But with no parole in the federal system, the man is looking at years of prison time.
Be more than 30 seconds away from you.
Investigators offer to revert to state charges, which would make him eligible for parole if he cooperates. In the end, his fear of prison prevails, and he agrees to turn informant. The plan is to wire the informant with a recording device and send him into the trailer to see if Chubbuck's there.
Go in there, sit down, and think about the wire. We'll give you time to get comfortable with it, but
These guys,
can you do a test on that? Just relax, get comfortable with that wire.
let's just go.
It's a dangerous assignment. If the gang realizes he's cooperating, they'll likely kill him on the spot. Over the wire, investigators listen as the informant tries to calm down the people inside. It's tense. Something's definitely going on. The informant asks about Chubbuck, but the men say he's not there.
Nobody back there.
When the tension grows, it's too much. It's time for the informant to get out. At the police station, investigators debrief the informant.
You said you heard something in the back room, right?
Yeah, big deal. That's like his girlfriend or something.
But you don't know that.
What are you trying to do?
They're convinced Chubbuck is hiding in the trailer and persuade the informant to go back in.
You are going back.
Something's changed. We gotta go back.
Don't know that.
All right, come on, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Thanks.
Everyone all station, stand by.
Undercover officers stand by, ready to move in if anything goes wrong.
We'll use the bathroom real quick, all right, guys?
All units, he's definitely inside.
Get back! Get back! He's okay, man. He's all right.
Eventually, everyone calms down and no one gets hurt.
Sorry, man. I need a place to stay, man. Can I crash on the couch?
Yeah, man. Sorry, man.
Sorry. Look, man, I'm gonna tell my buds. I'll be right back, all right? Man, I hope you're all right, man. I'm sorry about that. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna tell my buds, man. I'll be right back, all right, man?
Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor.
He exited the mobile home and informed police that Byron Chubbuck was indeed inside that mobile home.
Albuquerque Police Department Lieutenant Terry Ward.
The informant told us that Chubbuck was very paranoid and very jumpy. Most career criminals are paranoid. They trust very few people. They're constantly looking behind their backs. They keep very low profiles. They move quite often. So they are paranoid, and sometimes it can even be a drug-induced paranoia.
Immediately, members of Albuquerque PD's specially trained tactical arrest teams respond to the call, hoping the takedown will end peacefully, but well prepared if it doesn't. Members of Albuquerque's gang unit and repeat offenders program move in stealthily. The men refuse orders to stop. Investigators scramble to contain Chubbuck, determined to stop the dangerous fugitive. But Byron Chubbuck has never given up easy. Detective Richard Lewis speeds toward the scene. Seconds later, Lewis spots the car Chubbuck's in.
When Detective Lewis realized that the vehicle coming at him was indeed Byron Chubbuck, the person we had been looking for, he made a decision to stop the vehicle right then and there.
Lewis decides to force a crash. officers approach and find Chubbuck lying motionless, a Tech-9 semi-automatic handgun beside him. He's wounded by a single bullet to the chest, but he's alive. Officers arrest his accomplice, Ronald Baker, still dazed from the crash. Detectives then trace the rounds that missed. Several pierced a nearby trailer while residents slept inside. But when police check on them, everyone's fine.
There was a great sense of relief because this investigation and the publicity and all the long hours had come to this crescendo, and it had ended as it should. The good guys weren't hurt, and the bad guy was hurt, and he was in custody.
Special Agent Scott Campbell.
In the end, Chubbuck showed his true colors. He wasn't the Robin the Hood mythical character that we dubbed him as, and he started believing. He was actually the violent felon that he is.
Chubbuck is later convicted of multiple charges, including escape, robbery, and assault with a weapon. A federal judge adds 40 years to his original 40-year sentence. He fully recovers from the gunshot wound that stopped his crime spree.
During the investigation, during our research and our background check, I had the opportunity to read some of his correspondence. Very intelligent man. He could be a very successful civilian living a very productive life. But for some reason, he chose to go into robbing banks. And he was very good at it for a short while. And his greed and his ego is eventually what led to his downfall.
Byron Chubbuck was quick to fire, threatening agents' lives. But because investigators never gave up, he's no longer a risk to anyone outside the prison system.